I've been practicing mental health as a counselor for over 10 years at this point, which is kind of an insane number. And in that time, I've gotten to see some of the most disgusting, unsettling, and nasty types of experiences that a human being can have. And I gotta say, number one among them, maybe number two, would be the ways that I've seen parents treat children. And I just don't, for the life of me, understand how someone could treat a child in ways that I have heard stories. It would make your skin crawl. But perhaps number one is when you see love turn into hatred and you see a couple get divorced. There are very few things that make a person become a greater monster than watching that love disappear and turn into pure, raw, like unadulterated hatred. Now, there may have been adultery involved, but just the purest form of human aggression, manipulation, and malevolent action. It is disgusting. So let's watch some videos about it. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Jesse Lyon. I'm a licensed counselor who helps you understand the psychology behind pop culture. And today, a little shout out to Mayday over on the Discord server who sent me this gentleman. And it's honestly, he's been on the Diary of a CEO podcast. He's been in a previous YouTube video of mine, and I just find him fascinating. And I do actually a lot of work with lawyers as a counselor because, first of all, their job is so just grueling and tiresome and prone to burnout in really kind of gross ways. So they really need some mental health support. But they also understand human behavior in ways where they have to be honest. They don't have to cut corners. They're going to be real with the way that human beings behave because they're not trying to play nice. They're trying to win an argument. And so it's really pretty fascinating. So this is, if I can remember correctly, let me show you here. This is James J. Sexton, a New York divorce lawyer. And we're going to watch some interesting comments that he has to say about how love can turn into hatred that may just help you avoid disaster in your own relationships. If you want to chat more with me, by the way, join the Discord server over at lyonmentalhealth.com. You can get all that stuff there. And if you're watching the video and going to enjoy this lovely content, do me a favor, spread it with more people around the internet so they can have the advice too. Hit subscribe and like the video down below. Without further ado, let's get into it.
I prefer to represent the bad guy or a bad woman because it's lower stakes. I represent victims of domestic violence. I represent perpetrators of domestic violence.
I feel like this is the same reason. Gosh, this is going to sound terrible. Yeah, I'm actually not going to say that.
Bruh.
Nix, cut that piece.
I prefer to represent the bad guy or a bad woman because it's lower stakes. I represent victims of domestic violence. I represent perpetrators of domestic violence. And
is it normal to do both sides? I feel like that would be so hard. Like, as somebody who's a counselor and like is there to always advocate for the client and like help them find healthy ways, like I don't know how I'd feel like helping someone do the wrong thing. That makes me feel kind of icky, you know?
I would rather represent the villain for two reasons.
Okay.
One is tactical. The bank robber always has a tactical advantage over the cops because they can shoot innocent bystanders. Like the person who doesn't care about the kids has a significant tactical advantage in divorce litigation. So,
God damn, that's so true though. I see so many parents who are struggling with divorce, and it's always the ones who are trying to do the right thing and who actually care that end up in my office and who are struggling the most. One, because toxic people rarely seek out mental health help because they enjoy their toxicity. But number two is because you have to play by the rules and do the right thing. You can't be as manipulative, conniving, mean, and evil if you're trying to do the right thing for your kid. And he's absolutely right. And so the people that I see the most tore up are the ones who are trying to do it right. If you don't care, you can use whatever opportunity is at your disposal to do whatever you want to accomplish. And so it's like you get a whole bunch more options if you allow yourself to be evil, which is unfortunately true.
So you have a bigger palette to choose from. The other is, it is very frightening as an advocate to know that the only thing standing between justice and your client is the argument you're going to make on their behalf.
He's got a point. He's like, there's two sides of it, right? It's like it's more options if you're an evil person, but it's also less pressure for the lawyer because it's like, well, whoops. Well, I guess the bad guy got what he deserved. I'm going to sleep well tonight either way. You know, I make my check and I'm going to go home.
Half high pressure. So if I'm representing an unbelievable piece of and I do a really good job as an advocate and I obfuscate the facts and I misdirect and I'm successful in my argument, I did my job. The system failed, but it wasn't my fault.
It's so interesting being a lawyer because like you have to let go of that responsibility of like, it's not my job to figure out who's right. It's just my job to argue. So lawyers are just such an interesting breed. It's really difficult to have a lawyer as a client. And I don't know if any lawyers are watching this, but I find a lot of, especially my intern therapists and the counselors who work for me, struggle with their lawyers because they are so direct and you have to be really confrontational with a lawyer. But what I find is that with a lawyer, when you're confronting them, that can actually be a way of showing them care and empathy. It's like, hey, I care enough about you and your mental health to argue back with you. And so it's like a test with my lawyers. And I love it so much because I love meeting that challenge. They're like, hey, do you actually know what you're talking about? Can I actually trust you? And do you actually care enough to argue with me? Because most people just bow out of the way and allow me to steamroll them because it's not worth the energy and effort. It's like you have to play at that high intensity. And I love that about my lawyer clients. If you're a lawyer, let me know. Is it hard to find a mental health counselor who can like spar with you verbally, or how does that go? This guy apparently, I guess, has a smaller channel. I've been kind of like peeking at this. Let me transition back over here. But he's got some really interesting videos. We got to watch another one.
What does
here.
it take for your partner to say to you, you're so smart. Like, I just love being around you. Like, you're so handsome. I'm so lucky. Like, what does that take? That's nothing. It doesn't cost anything. It takes nothing to do that.
Why don't we do it?
I think whoever discovered water, it wasn't a fish. Like, I think you're just in it and you just stop seeing it. And that person's just there. And again, I don't know. And I also think culture is antagonistic.
He's got so much to say, like, and he's saying it so fast that we have to break it down. Like he's spot on about some things, but he doesn't like develop them very far in his interview. And I wish that he did a little bit more. The Gottmans are two individuals. They're a husband and wife team. The Gottmans have done like some of the most research on relationships that's out there right now. And what he's talking about, like that love, it's natural in the beginning, but it like changes over time and it's easy to kind of forget. Like you have to put in the energy, and the energy specifically, like if you want to know what it is, the energy that you have to put in is called connection attempts. And so they can actually predict divorce with a really high rate of success based on observing a couple's connection attempts. Right. So like if I'm at the window and like looking out and I'm like, oh, look, there's my cat right there. Isn't she cute and cuddly? And my wife ignores me. Connection attempt broken. I'm falling out of love. But if my wife goes, oh yeah, she's so cute. I saw her do this cute thing the other day. Connection attempt made and taking it further. That's really where love comes from, like psychologically, scientifically. And when you start to lose that, when you stop putting that energy in and start taking the relationship for granted, is when that relationship goes. And so when you're in it, it's kind of natural. You naturally do it. And so he's like, yeah, you know, whoever discovered water, it wasn't a fish. When you're around it, you forget what components are necessary to make that relationship work.
Antagonistic to it. Because the example I give to people, because people love their dogs, and I love my dogs, but like dogs are a great way to look at this rationally. Because
was he like getting emotional there? He really loves his dog. It's kind of cute, like tough New York lawyer, but he's like, but my dog, I love them.
I've got a 13-year-old dog.
Okay.
I got him when he was a puppy. Now he's 13.
Man, my Yorkshire Terrier lived to be 17 years old before she passed away. That dog grew up with me my entire life. It's crazy. Those little dogs with lots of love, and they'll live forever sometimes.
And like me, he's slowed down a lot. His back hurts. He's not.
Look at him. He's getting emotional. Look at the way his face, like the corners around his mouth, and he's like trying to hold it together. He loves that dog, man. That's so cute.
The puppy he used to be. I have never once looked at that dog and gone, I gotta get a puppy. This old dog, he didn't look as cute as he used to. And like, oh my God, have you seen how cute puppies are? Like,
oh man, is he spot on. How many times do we say that about our partner? It's so messed up. It's so messed up. But I got a little bit of a counterpoint though. I've met people who say that, like about their dogs. They're like, God, I hate this freaking dog. Or like my cat, right? My cat right here. I love my cat so much, but she has allergies. And so she sneezes boogers. just everywhere, just boogers all around the house. It's really easy to get frustrated because, you know, she's got this problem and this problem is inconvenient for me. And I think the same thing happens in relationships. It's like she was really cute when she was a little kitten and she's playing around and everything was fine. But then as responsibility comes and as that novelty wears off and she stops serving me, and now it requires work of me to love my cat well. I'm just using my cat as an example. I have seen some people do some mean and terrible things. Animal abuse. This is where animal abuse comes in. Is like, oh, well, it's going to be cute to have a puppy serve my purpose in this moment. And then they're just like, oh yeah, well, it was fun for now. And now I'm just going to take out all my rage on this beautiful creature. I would never. Also, no, I would never do that to you. You sleep good over there on your little pillow. But I've seen it. So like, it's a good example with the dog, but like also people be doing that stuff, man.
Never. It's my dog, man. I fall more in love with that dog every single day. You know?
That's a sign of a good person.
Your romantic partner? Like, when did it become acceptable as it is in culture to just piss all over your partner?
Oof.
Like every guy, it's
Yeah.
like the I'm married to the most loathsome harpy ever to castrate a man. Like this one, the old ball and chain. And women, it's like the guy's like, oh,
It's
this
bad.
idiot, like this just lovable idiot. You know, he doesn't know anything. He's so stupid. Men are so stupid. Like when did that, what do you think's gonna come from that?
That's it. That's it. There are 101 million different ways that you can ruin a relationship. But the question you got to ask yourself is, the way that I'm behaving in this relationship, is this going to cause my relationship to improve or to become more and more miserable? And people don't see the death by 1,000 cuts. They really don't. You know, they think that they can get away with this, like, well, I'm going to put them down because it makes me feel good. I'm just going to be sarcastic rather than engage in the conversation that's going to heal our relationship. I'm just going to avoid or use the silent treatment rather than actually have a conversation about my feelings. Like, what do you think that's going to do in the end? It's not going to work out for you. And so I often say this, often in couples counseling, people sometimes complain about the price of counseling. And I'm like, well, listen, you can come to counseling and it'll take you this number of sessions and it'll cost this much money, or you can get a divorce and it'll be 15 times that amount. You tell me and I'll be here when you're ready. But I have, for some guys who are like very financially minded, I've never had to do it with a woman, but you know, it's not that there aren't women who are financially minded, but it's just usually the guys that I run into are that way. You got to break it down for them. It's like, listen, this is an investment in the future. It'll make your life happier and it's going to save you money by putting in an investment now. It's your choice, homie. What are you going to do?
Other than this disdain that we can then have for each other and this sort of disrespect, as opposed to being like so into each other, which is what you were when you were strangers.
I also got to add too, there's a difference between like people and dogs. Right? That may sound obvious, but there is a huge difference between like the mentality that goes into a relationship with your pet versus a partner. And I guess maybe we're going to talk about culture here for a minute. Like a lot of people are having pets rather than children because you don't have to put in the same amount of emotional energy. Listen, I said it. It's a lot easier. Some people are not built for it, right? Some people are not ready to handle that kind of responsibility, so they get a pet. Great. You know what? Better to recognize that you don't have the emotional fortitude, wherewithal, or health to deal with another human being, and so you get a pet instead. That's great. But here's the key difference. We know that like my cat over here is not going to have an intelligent conversation with me. I'm 100% responsible for what happens to that cat. And that's the difference. We often look to our partner to baby us, to take care of us. We play the cat when we should be treating our partner like the cat. Nah, don't take that too far and in the wrong way. What I'm talking about is responsibility. Obviously, you know, treat your partner with dignity and respect, and they have their autonomy, of course. But what I'm saying is you need to take 100% of responsibility for what is happening inside of that relationship. And that includes your necessity to leave if that relationship becomes toxic and abusive because you're allowing that person to continue. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that even leaving immediately is the right thing to do because it could be dangerous and could end your life. I've seen those situations. Absolutely. But I think one of the key differences when we're talking about love and why it disappears from a relationship is because we expect our partner to take care of us, and we don't take 100% responsibility. If I'm not happy in the relationship, that's my fault. If my partner's not happy in the relationship, I need to take responsibility for helping that too. I may not be able to 100% fix it, but I've got to take responsibility for 100% of what's going on inside of that relationship. And that's where I see relationships fall apart. And I'm glad that he brought in that pet relationship because I think it illustrates that very well.
You know, when you didn't know each other, you know, all the same women sitting around in a group of women talking about how much their husbands suck. When their female friend goes, oh my God, I'm seeing this guy I just started seeing. What did he, oh my God, he sounds so great. All this is your guy 5 years ago.
Absolutely right. Someone told me the other day, they're like talking about the spark in the beginning, the butterfly feelings, you know, the honeymoon period of a relationship. And they're like, I think the honeymoon period is coming to an end. And I'm like, yeah, I sure hope it is. And they, you know, they look at me cross-eyed. You know, I'm known for doing that in my therapy sessions. I say off the wall stuff that I mean. I said, yeah, I'm glad that it is, because the honeymoon phase is all about lies. We put on our best clothes. We put on a face of makeup or do our hair or take a shower and put on cologne. Like, that's not how I smell. That's not how I look. That's not how I typically dress. We talk about all the best accomplishments that we've made. We don't talk about our dysfunctional family. We don't talk about our exes. We don't talk about our bad habits and behaviors. We give them all the best parts of ourselves in order to create a false image. Even if you think that you're not doing that, you have an image of yourself in your head that you're communicating to that potential partner across the table, which is not an accurate representation of who you really are. If I ask you, are you a selfish person? Of course, you're going to tell me no, right? The reality is you might be, but of course you don't think of yourself that way. And so your partner, potential partner, is going to have to find that out on their own, despite you giving them the concept of yourself that you believe you are, which very seldom is accurate, because very, very few people have very good self-insight about who they actually are and what their faults, foibles are. And so that honeymoon phase, that butterfly in your stomach, is an anxiety response. You are scared because you're worried that they're going to find you out. Think about it. The butterfly effect is because this is a new person. You want to make a good impression. And so you're over there thinking like, oh, I'm in love, when you're actually just scared that they're going to find out the lies that you're telling them and that you're going to see through the lies that they're telling you. It's important to have it, right? You got to ease into a relationship. It's a test. Right? And so sometimes people are like, well, should we get rid of the honeymoon phase? No, not at all. Not at all. We need that because it's showing, do I understand the way that I'm coming across? And can I sort of craft my image in a way and have self-restraint and control and demonstrate that self-restraint and control to this potential partner across the table? Now, when you get into a relationship, though, it's important that that goes away and you start to see real things. You know, you go bowling together and you see some competitive spirit come out. You're like, I'm seeing the real them a little bit. If you can navigate a little bit competitive spirit during putt-putt golf or bowling, you build trust. And then you have a bigger risk later. You're like, oh, I'm going to invite them over. This is my vulnerable space. They're going to see how I actually live in my house. They're going to see like how much money I actually make because of what nice or not nice things I have at home. Bigger risk. If they can navigate that and you stay with them, greater trust. And then the risks get bigger and bigger and the trust gets bigger and bigger until you have like, you move in together, you split a bank account together, you raise kids together, you buy a house together, you retire together, right? You intertwine your lives together, and each risk comes with greater trust. Risk, trust, until you live happily ever after the way that it's supposed to work. And so, I don't know, good way to kind of bring that up, but seldom people think about that. And it's one of the biggest pieces of relationship advice that I can give you. So take it for what it's worth.
But somehow now, you're really going to buy the delusion that if it all works out with him and they get married and they do their little fairy tale thing and the cake and the dress and the whole thing,
in the name,
that in 5 years, she's still going to be like, he's so great. No, it's going to be, oh, he's again, just like the rest of you. Because I think
can you love someone despite seeing the real them? That's the question. That takes maturity on your part. And I'm saying this to myself. I'm talking to myself here.
There is something about that where we're trying to like not make people self-conscious. So we just like take the piss out of our partner all the time in front of, people or around other people. And I don't find that true.
Big red flag. If you're watching someone put their partner down, that is never a good sign. Never a good sign. And it's not about the partner. It's about the person talking down about their partner. That is definitely showing that they are not taking responsibility for that relationship. All right, here we go.
Why do you talk in the book about how wealthy clients like to sleep with the nanny?
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. I mean,
why do people sleep with the nanny? I got some thoughts. Let's see what James has to say here.
I have a theory about it, and I think that what I call the nanny fascination, it's not that hard to understand. Like, the nanny is a lot of the characteristics of the wife, right? She's good with the kids. She's there to be a supportive other to the husband. She's a helpmate, but without any of the autonomy and agency. Like, she's an employee at the end of the day. It's so much simpler of a relationship in the sense that it's like, you got to do a good job or I'm going to fire you,
Yeah. And so that goes back to exactly what we were talking about just a minute ago, is like, who's taking on the responsibility in that relationship? I have money, I'm going to pay them. They take on responsibility for navigating, maneuvering, and manipulating the emotional burden of the relationship. And so it's fake. It's the same thing as with a counselor. A lot of people will feel like they're friends with their counselor. And oh my gosh, I'm going to call some people out here. The counselors who become friends with their clients or feel like friends with their clients, I don't trust them. I don't trust them as far as I could throw them. And I have some very thin arms. I can't throw things very far. Here's the situation. It is supposed to be a payment for service. I give you my time, attention, energy, affection toward your problems, and you pay me for that time, because that way it's a clean break. Nobody's taking responsibility. Nobody feels beholden to the other. When that starts to manipulate into a friendship, it's a false friendship because it's not based on mutual respect, care, and trust. You don't have to deal with any of my feelings. I'm your counselor. I'm your therapist. And so it's supposed to be that way because that allows trust. I've talked with many clients about this. Like, when you pay for my service, you don't owe me anything. And it allows people to risk risky situations where they know I'm not going to reject you because you're paying me. And it's supposed to be that way. That is healing. That is helpful because you can ensure trust, right? In a friendship, you have to kind of like maneuver around those things. A friend might just leave you or abandon you. Therapist is not going to do that. It's like, hey, it doesn't matter what you tell me. As long as it's not a threat to yourself or others, I'm here for it. We're going to talk it through and I'm going to care for you unconditionally no matter what. It's a pay for service. I can't just give my time to somebody who's like going to bring my life down as a friend. I have to let go of that friend because I have a wife and kid to like take care of, right? So I digress a little bit, but it's the same thing with this nanny, right? When you make out or have an affair with the nanny, it's a false relationship. And so it's a pay for service. And so it allows it to be clean and to have a feeling in that relationship that you can't have because there's no risk. And so it's like, it feels risky because you're doing something you're not supposed to, but without any actual emotional risk. And so that's why you see a lot of closed and guarded people have affairs with nannies because they can get the sex without the emotional risk. What do you think?
Sure. Not talking back.
Yeah, don't talk back because I'm your employer, and you're not going to.
Yep.
So I think I get it. I also think, too, that this is dangerous ground, especially in the year of our Lord 2024. But I think she's also a version of the wife. Like, she's a version of the wife when the wife was just a woman. Like, she has a life outside the home. Like, when she's not nannying, she's out doing stuff. And like, she's gone places. She does things. There's something mysterious about her, The advice I give in the book is
independence is important. He makes a good point. Sometimes in couples, if the relationship gets too connected, if too much life is shared and you lose your own independent identity, it can actually ruin the relationship too. And he's right about that. There's some good research to it.
Is that I think that wives can embrace the part of themselves that's the nanny. Like, take the time to don't let your spouse and your children eclipse who you are. Like, who you are is who your husband fell in love with.
That's great advice for any human being.
Don't forget, in your desire to be a good parent and your desire to be a good partner, don't forget to be really good to yourself and to cultivate your interests and your passions and to try to enjoy them as best you can, you know, without shirking. Obviously, none of us wants to shirk our responsibilities to our families and to our children, but you're important. The husband and the wife, you know, are important. You're important to each other. You know, remember who you are. Remember the value you brought to the relationship.
I see so many people sacrifice themselves for a relationship, not realizing that that's actually what's dooming the relationship. Fantastic. I hope it's a reminder to you to care for yourself and really to maintain your own identity and not lose yourself in always being there for others. Oftentimes we can try and heal our own wounds by continuing to hurt and abuse ourselves while trying to be for others what nobody ever was for us. You first have to be for yourself what you need. And then from that abundance, you can spill over into the lives of everybody else. I hope that helps. I'm very curious if you like this longer format of video and what you think about Mr. James J. Sexton here. I'd love to know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, bye.